Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Devin Shanahan Show. So today we're going to go over a little bit of updates of where we stand with all the lawsuits surrounding the election and with the Trump campaign obviously disputing the election. It's been a little over a week and a half, right around a week and a half now since the election. Yeah, right around a week and a half. We're going to talk about that, see where we stand. There's been a lot of updates in the Pennsylvania court cases. There's been a lot of updates in other state court cases too, but I think that Pennsylvania is one of the biggest states right now. I also think that the Democrats have most to lose from these court cases there, just because of the way that the Secretary of State over there in these courts ruled against the Article 2, Section 1 of the amendment, essentially. And it affects hundreds of thousands of ballots, let's just say. So it's enough votes to definitely turn the results in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania being 20 electoral votes. That would mean Trump would only need one other state. Michigan and Arizona are also, obviously Georgia. Georgia's kind of still tossed up. There's military mail-in ballots that still have yet to be counted, so Trump could win with those, but it'll be close. So he would need Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, or Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Obviously, it is a slim chance that he actually pulls all of this off, but I do believe that no one on either side is giving him enough credit. I do believe that a lot of these lawsuits are filed in very good standing, let's say. They are based on evidence. It's just a matter of whether or not the evidence is enough to essentially change enough votes or cast doubt on enough votes to, without a doubt, change the result of the election in some of these states. So obviously there's the whole conspiratorial thing, like the Hammer scorecard, all that, which it's not so much conspiratorial just because Hammer and scorecard does exist. It has been used before. That has all been proven in a 2015 federal court case that was leaked by Dennis Montgomery. I talked about that in my last video. You guys should go check that out if you have any interest in that. But as of now, we have no evidence that Hammer and scorecard program was used in this election. So that part of it is a conspiracy theory, or at least unproven, right, at best. So yeah, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all the court cases. We're also going to talk about a little bit about AOC, everybody's favorite leftist, right? Socialist, Marxist, whatever you want to call her, right? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the downfall, or the impending downfall, soon to come downfall of Fox News. And it's basically because, you know, over the course of the election, in my opinion, it started with them calling Arizona, and then over the course of the election coverage after them calling Arizona way too early, in my opinion, they never rescinded that call, and then people kind of started to realize that their establishment, 100%, and as you know, Trump was popular because he kind of broke through the establishment, and people who voted for Trump were voting for him because they do not want establishment politicians running their lives anymore. And people realizing that Fox is part of the establishment just makes them part of the enemy, essentially. So let's get into it. Got an article here from the Daily Wire. Pennsylvania judge tosses some mail-in ballots in case involving deadline to prove identification. A Pennsylvania judge ruled on Thursday that voters who took advantage of an extended deadline to provide missing proof of identification will not have their ballots counted because the government official who gave the extension lacked the legal authority to do so. Commonwealth Court Judge Mary Hannah Levitt ruled Thursday that Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar lacked the authority to extend the original November 9th deadline by 3 days, Bloomberg Law reported. The ruling means the battleground state that's already been declared for President-elect Joe Biden can't count ballots from voters who submitted missing ID between November 10th and November 12th. Ballots with, quote, cured ID issues received before that aren't being challenged. So I'm not sure if I'm fairly certain that those cured ballots, and cured means essentially that a poll worker contacted these people who had filled out a ballot incorrectly or had not provided the proper form of identification. A poll worker contacted those people and helped them through the process of either filling out another ballot or fixing their current ballot so that it can be counted. Now, I'm guessing that most of these poll workers in states like Philadelphia are Democratic, and therefore they probably only called the people who had ballots that were voted for Biden, which is, I mean, that's a problem, right? That falls under essentially the equal opportunity. There's equal opportunity laws, like essentially everyone has to have the same equal opportunity to vote, and that would essentially be discriminating against Trump voters. But that's a whole nother story. But I do believe that these cured ballots are being challenged. They are just not being challenged in this particular court case that we're talking about in this article. So while this is not a huge article, it's not a huge win because it only has to do with ballots between November 10th and November 12th, which can't be that many because that's already 7 to 10 days after the election. But it is a big deal because it means that at least these Pennsylvania courts, at least this Pennsylvania court, the Commonwealth Court, is willing to see these cases. And I think that a lot of these cases are going to be similar to this one. I mean, essentially the ruling in this case was the Secretary of State went around the Pennsylvania state legislature and extended the deadline for, essentially providing identification. And what that fundamentally, what that means is that the court ruled that it's up to the state legislature to make laws, which it is. Article 2 of the Constitution says that it is up to the legislature of each state to determine the manner by which thereof electors are elected, which means essentially what that means in layman's terms is the state legislatures, like the House of Representatives and senators for the state, they come together, the state congressional members, they come together and they set voting laws, is what that means. And by the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania here, Kathy Bookvar, by extending the deadline by 3 days, she therefore went around their laws, the state laws, and violated her authority. She did something that was not in her authority. And this is straight out of the Constitution, the highest law of the land. So let's go on. It is unclear how many ballots the ruling will impact, but state officials have said that the lawsuits brought by the Trump campaign would not impact enough ballots to alter the outcome of the race. That is correct. I do not believe that these will have enough outcome. But like I said, I think the fundamental ruling in this case shows that a lot of other cases to follow that are based on the same fundamental ruling, or fundamental law, which is Article 2, Section 1, meaning the state legislatures have the power to set the voting laws. I think that a lot of the other cases being filed in Pennsylvania have to do with that same thing. And this shows that the door has been opened, that there are some judges who interpret the Constitution correctly and in Pennsylvania, and they're willing to make the hard call. I think it's the correct call, but they're willing to make the hard call in the face of all the media malfeasance and the media lies surrounding some of these court cases. So, it's good news. It doesn't really mean anything in terms of the election, but it is good news going forward because while this case might not involve many votes, some of the other cases that are also about the same problem, the same fundamental problem of Article 2, Section 1, it goes to show that we may be able to win some of those too. And by we, I mean Trump supporters. Let's go on. Let me get a drink here, then we'll read this article from the Epic Times. All right, let's go. We got an article here from the Epic Times by Mimi Nugent. Pennsylvania officials, DNC, ask federal judge to dismiss Trump lawsuit. Officials in the election battleground state of Pennsylvania and the DNC asked a federal judge on Thursday to dismiss the Trump campaign's lawsuit that seeks to block the state from certifying the results of the 2020 general election. According to documents filed with the U.S. Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, lawyers for the Pennsylvania Secretary of State and 7 of the state's counties said that the case made vague and unsupported allegations on the basis of repeatedly rejected legal theories and no evidence. This court should see this lawsuit for what it is, a transparent, premeditated attack on our electoral system that broadly seeks to disenfranchise all Pennsylvania voters who legally cast ballots in this election, 4 of the counties said in a court filing. Pennsylvania officials said that they, quote, administered a proper, fair, and secure election and would vigorously defend the case. The DNC arguments filed to the court also argued that the Trump campaign had, quote, brought this lawsuit too late and accused the campaign of seeking to, quote, overturn the election. This is all just bogus nonsense. They are literally just filing suits saying that the Trump campaign should not be able to file suits, which is totally fine. It is totally legal in the United States to file countersuits to get what you want done. And I have no problem with that. What is interesting here is that by essentially filing these suits, these countersuits to the Trump campaign, the Democrats are showing their true feelings, which is that they do not want these court cases to go through. They do not want legal court cases to be brought, and they do not want us to investigate or audit any of these election methods or any of the way that these votes were counted in Pennsylvania. That should speak wonders to you. It does not prove anything, but it is just circumstantial evidence, but why would you not want transparency in the election system? I was talking earlier with some people, some members of my family. I was talking about politics. Me and my father, we often talk about politics, and I was getting into it a little bit with him, and I made a point to him. I said, even if the Democrats or the Republicans, doesn't matter who, even if the people who are counting these votes are doing it in 100% honesty and counting them all how they should be counted, and they're not lying, and everything's perfect, right? Let's say every vote was counted perfectly. Now, I do not believe that in the slightest, but let's say that every vote is counted perfectly, and all these changing of the rules last minute to accept ballots late or to not have signature verification. Let's say that was all just done in good faith, and no one meant to essentially impose any fraud or disenfranchise any voters by doing this. Let's just assume that for the sake of argument. The problem and the damage has already been done. And the damage has already been done because by setting these laws, by changing these laws last minute, by going around the state legislatures who under Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, they are the ones who have the right to make the state laws surrounding voters, or surrounding voting laws, essentially. By setting all these laws, by changing all this stuff, by going behind the state legislatures' backs and getting court rulings from these rogue courts that have judges that are Democratic judges, by doing that, you have given the you've put forward an image of fraud. There may not be any fraud going on, but you're making it look like there is fraud, and that is just as bad. The damage is already done, and the Democrats are doing it again here. They're filing countersuits. Donald Trump is over here, and yes, we all know that Donald Trump could use better language and he could say things with more tact. We all know this. Everybody knows this. Trump supporters know this. Anti-Trump people know this. Trump haters know this. People with Trump derangement syndrome know this. Everybody knows that Trump says things that are stupid sometimes. But that's just who he is. What he actually means is something completely different. And he's standing up here and he is saying, I think that there was some voter fraud and we need to look into this and we need to audit some of these states because my campaign's internal polls were showing that we were going to win. And it's very suspicious that I was kicking Joe Biden's butt on election night, and then all of a sudden a bunch of swing states stop counting for a number of hours, and then when they kick back up counting, Joe Biden gets hundreds of thousands of votes in these swing states and ends up somehow pulling the election out of nowhere and winning. And he's saying, I think we need to look into this. I think we need to have some transparency. He's not just sitting in there, trying to throw a coup. He's trying to hold a military coup. People on MSNBC, people on CNN, they had MSNBC had some sort of ex-CIA guy on today, and they were saying that they were going to have to send in SWAT to kick down the door and drag Trump out of here. What? What are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about? You think Trump is just going to hold up in the Oval Office, shut the doors, do a bunch of coke, and pull a Scarface? This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Let me get a drink here. My mouth's getting dry from getting heated. Sorry, I just get real mad at this stuff. This is pathetic. Children, we're dealing with children on the other side of the aisle here. Absolutely absurd. Like I said, the point I was trying to get to before I went off on a rant is that, by filing this case, the Democrats are just saying that, we don't want you to get to the bottom of this. That's what it looks like, right? That's what it looks like. That may not be the reason, but that is certainly what it looks like, because the correct response, in my opinion, on the Democratic side should be this. It should be, Donald Trump and the 71 to 72 million people who voted for him think that there was fraud. So if they think there's fraud and they want to go about the legal process of filing some court cases to figuring it out if there is fraud or not, more power to them. Let's do it. I support that. Let's figure out what really happened. And if there's evidence of fraud and it means we need to change the results of some elections, let's do it. But if not, then we're good. And then everyone knows that the election was done essentially in a transparent and trustworthy manner, and it was done correctly and it is valid. And then we can go on, and then we can have a Biden presidency, and everyone will feel confident in the state of our democracy. But no, they want to file these countersuits, and they want to say, no, you don't have the right to file these suits to figure out if there's fraud or not. You don't have the right, because what evidence is there? Well, you have presented no evidence, blah, 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 blah. No evidence has been presented. Are you kidding me? That's what these lawsuits are for. These lawyers are gathering evidence, and they are presenting it to the courts in these lawsuits. Donald Trump doesn't have evidence 3 hours after the election happened. You heard the MSNBC, a day after the election, there's no evidence for whatever Trump is saying. He's just going out and saying all this crap, and he's going to hold a military coup. No, this is what the lawyers are doing. What are you talking about? They're not going to release the evidence 3 hours after they announce they're going to file some lawsuits. No, they're digging for this evidence. They're doing it as quickly as they can. They have thousands of lawyers and legal teams out there volunteering their time. They are not being paid. They are volunteering their time to go out there and put some good cases together because they believe in our democratic system in this country. And for the Democrats to sit by and say that what they are doing is a military coup or somehow some sort of, they called Trump Hitler. That's essentially what they're calling these lawyers too. They're saying that these lawyers do not believe in the democratic process when in reality, all they're trying to do is get to the bottom of it. It should not be a partisan issue. Everyone should want to get to the bottom of it. Everyone should want to know whether or not there was fraud in the election, and if there was fraud to the election, to what extent. Everyone should have transparency. Transparency is the minimum requirement for people to have trust in the democratic system. It's crazy. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. Let's go on. New article. Another article from the Epoch Times by Jack Phillips. Pennsylvania court rules Secretary of State improperly changed deadlines 2 days before election. This is another article about the same thing I just read. I am sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We are not talking about this again because I just went over it in depth. Let's move on to our next topic, right? Let's move on to Fox News. Let's talk about Fox News. Who's been watching Fox News lately? I was watching Fox News a little bit the night of the election. I was also watching CNN, the Daily Wire, Steven Crowder. I was watching some Tim Pool. I was watching a little bit of the Joe Rogan show. He had this funny show with Tim Dillon. Tim Dillon is hilarious. If you haven't heard of him, check him out. He's a comedian. He's awesome. He has a YouTube channel. He also has a podcast. I was listening to some Michael Malice. What else is CNN, MSNBC, everyone? I was pretty much jumping around listening to everyone. I was listening to TYT for a little while there when Trump had a big lead because they get all hot and bothered. They're totally socialist Marxist, and they started like crying when Trump won Florida. It was awesome. But anyhow, we got an article here today. I'm sure a lot of you, that's what I was getting at. I'm sure a lot of you people were watching Fox News during the election because a lot of the people who listen to my show are conservatives. And, during the election, Fox News called Arizona way too early. And then when everyone came out and said, hey, you guys should probably rescind this call because you made it too early, they refused to. They were like, no, our Fox decision desk, they're the best people in the world, and they made a call, and there is absolutely 0% chance that Trump wins, and we are sticking by our call. Well, okay, whatever, and that got everyone hot and bothered. That got a lot of people pissed off, and, you saw the social media, you saw the Twitter hashtag, you saw everyone just hating on Fox News, and I'm pretty sure, half of the viewer base of Fox News, is going to leave Fox News over this, because, you see so many tweets, you see so many posts on social media. You see so many people like myself out there speaking on YouTube and podcasts and over the airwaves saying, Fox News is a joke now. They're completely part of the establishment. They threw behind everything they believed in. And, I've heard reports that Tucker Carlson, he's out there, he's talking about these fraud cases every night. He's bringing the people the news about these fraud cases. And I've heard that they have threatened to fire him over this. And he's just like, well, screw you guys. I'm going to say what I believe. I've made enough money. I've got enough money in the bank that if something happens to me, my children are going to be good. We got enough money saved up. I'll find another job. I'll start writing articles for my own company, or I'll start up my own thing, or I'll do a YouTube or channel or podcast. I got enough followers on my own, enough support on my own. You guys need me here at Fox more than I need you. And so I'm just going to call it how I see it, right? Which is good for him. Good for Tucker. I like Tucker a little bit. I don't really watch him that much. I don't really care too much for his show, but I mean, he's definitely my favorite person on Fox News. But in terms of the partisan, right-leaning pundits, at least on Fox News, there's some good people who call just the news segments, but I don't really consider them the same as the opinionated segments that Tucker Carlson has, and like Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, those people. But I mean, Fox News, they've said the quiet part out loud. They've come out, and everyone knows now they're completely an establishment media company, and I think this is a big day in media. I think or a big week, so to say, a big couple of weeks. It's marking, I think we're going to see the downfall of Fox News here once Trump is out of office and the ratings for the mainstream media, corporate media companies start to go down again, because they were all good. All these media companies, their ratings were plummeting in 2015, 2014. And then Trump came in, and then they started talking about Trump, and Trump was different, right? Trump is good news. If it bleeds, it leads. That's the old mantra, right, about the news. And Trump is always making things bleed. He's always out there saying stupid crap, and he's attacking people. He hits hard. He's always got dumb tweets, or he's always firing someone, right? And that makes for good news. That makes for good headlines. And, under the Trump campaign, all of the news companies, Tucker has the highest ratings ever out of any TV primetime show. You got CNN and MSNBC. They're all doing great ratings too. ABC, NBC, like they're all doing great ratings. And, I think we're about to see a big downfall because everyone, including Fox News, has revealed themselves as a 100% establishment corporate media company. And people don't want that. People voted for Trump because they voted for an anti establishment guy, a guy who wasn't a politician, a guy who, not a career politician at least, someone who, he was outside. He was from the outside looking in, and he said, hey, I got enough money to run my own campaign, and I'm going to try to fix this for the American people because I'm sick of what I'm seeing happening. And, he picked up on what people wanted. He picked up on what the American people wanted, and that's why he won. And people want more of that from the media, too. They want people calling it like they see it. I also think that's why people who are doing their own little shows, their own little podcasts, like me, and like there's a lot of names that are huge. There's a lot of huge names doing it, and I think those people are also, I think that's where the viewers who are now watching Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, any of those corporate TV media outlets, I think they're eventually going to move to the YouTubes and the podcasts. They're gonna get sick of that corporate media, and they're gonna want something else. They're gonna want a fresh point of view. They're gonna want someone who reads the news and speaks their mind, and that's what I'm doing. That's pretty much the gap I'm trying to fill in the market, and I think there's a big demand for it. But get another drink there. But yeah, let's read this article here from the Gateway Pundit about Fox News. I'm not gonna read it all. I like to kind of spew my thoughts and talk a little bit about an article, but we don't talk too much about the article. You guys know that, but let's go on. Fox News, a 21st century media Titanic, question mark. Once a Titan, now a Titanic? Just as the captain of the Titanic has gone down in history bearing a heavy share of the blame for that ship's fateful collision with a rogue iceberg on her maiden voyage, the Rupert Murdoch spawn are teeing themselves up as reckless buffoons who are driving a once thriving media property into a ratings collapse. Since Fox News fully unmasked itself as a new bastion of anti-Trump hatred on Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd, its conservative base of viewers have fled Fox's daytime lineup. Fox News, like the Titanic, is sinking. That's interesting. That's all I'm going to read because you guys get the gist. And they got this little interesting photo here with this crappy Photoshop where someone just literally put the Fox News logo onto this drawing of the Titanic sinking. And it looks like it's actually from the movie there, that drawing or something like that. But anyhow, you guys get it. We already talked about this. It's going down. It's going downhill. They're totally anti-Trump. They're totally anti-truth, in my opinion. They're just out there to get their ratings, to get their money, and it showed on Election Day, and it has showed from here on out too. I mean, they even went so far as Kayleigh is like literally cutting off Kayleigh McEnany. She was giving a presser. This is the White House press secretary, the press secretary for the president. The White House press secretary, and they cut her off. They cut her off mid-presser because they didn't like what she was saying. She was talking about the court cases that they were filing for fraud, about voter fraud, and they just cut her off. This is crazy. This is the official press correspondent for the White House, and they're cutting her off. That's like worse than what CNN and MSNBC does. So, I mean, if you guys are out there and you're listening to this and you like Fox News or used to like Fox News and you want some more conservative content, like and subscribe, share my channel, get my channel out, because I spread by word of mouth, and I think that I can fill some of that gap. And I'm not establishment. I am anti-establishment. I'm the furthest thing from establishment. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it because I like to do it, and I'm in it because I think people need to know the truth. And if you're looking for something to put on the TV all the time, go to like OAN, One American News Network. They got a good free deal going on right now through the end of the year. It's for all 2020. It's free. They're on the Roku. They're on everything, right? You can get it on your TV. They got apps for everything. Everything you got. Apple TV, Roku, Google Chromecast TV, whatever you got. You got a smart TV. They got stuff for that too, I'm sure. But you can get it on there. You can do the free trial for the whole year and see what you like. There's also Newsmax. So OAN and Newsmax. I'm not too familiar with Newsmax, but they are. Or at least I'm not too familiar with how to sign up for Newsmax and use it, but they're both similar. They are smaller, conservative, and they do TV, they do primetime TV, and they do television all throughout the day. It's just like your Fox News, but they're not establishment, and they're not spewing lies. They're talking real news, they're talking real facts, and it's good. It's refreshing. It's refreshing to see a break from this corporate media that is, sinking, in my opinion now. But it was a long time coming for them. Well, let's go on. We got our last topic today from the New York Post here. AOC and company's loathsome plan to keep lists of pro-Trumpies. So, well, we'll read it and then we'll talk about it. In Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado, a man named Coco, appointed to the job of Lord High Executioner, tries to figure out whom he should have killed. There will be, he says, no difficulty in finding plenty of people whose loss will be a distinct gain to society at large. And then he reveals that he has a, quote, a list of, quote, society offenders who never would be missed. Coco's example is being followed exactly by a group of petty and loathsome enforcers of pious attitudinal orthodoxy who have appointed themselves to the collective post of Lord High Career Executioner in post-Trump America. Okay, I've got to note who wrote this article and never read an article by them again, because what is this? What is this Coco, the Mikado, Gilbert and Sullivan's Lord High Executioner? What are these crazy words they're trying to use here to make them sound smart? You guys ever listening to someone and they use a bunch of big words to try to make them sound smart, and they just kind of string them all together and you have no idea what they're actually saying, and then when you actually break it down 5 minutes later, it takes you 5 minutes because they use so many big words that are nonsensical. When you actually break it down, it turns out that they were saying nothing and it doesn't make any sense. Like, what is this? Group of petty and loathsome enforcers of pious attitudinal orthodoxy. Pious attitudinal orthodoxy? Like, calm down, guys. Take some of those words out. Just come out and say it. Say it in layman's terms. People just want to get to the fact of the matter of fact. People don't want all this extra fluff around it, all this extra crap. People just want to read. They want to get the news. They want to absorb the news, and then they want to go on with their lives. But anyhow, I'm not reading the rest of this article because there's a ton of Coco stuff in here. I'm sorry I didn't proofread this before I brought it to you guys. I just saw it last minute and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. But, I'm familiar with what this article is talking about anyway. AOC put on Twitter a few days ago, she said, I hope everyone is keeping track of all the Trump supporters and putting them on a list. That's literally what she said. It's like, what do you mean? Why would you be putting Trump supporters on a list? Because you disagree with them? What are you going to do with that list in the meantime? What are you implying? What are you going to okay, it may start as just okay, this is the group of people that we need to ban from Facebook and Twitter because their opinions are outside of the Overton window and are unworthy of being heard and are unworthy of being in the social discourse. I'm sure that's what she means right now. But if you take this thing to its logical, radical extreme, to the end game of this, what they're going to do is, and I'm not saying this is what she's doing, but I'm saying, if this kind of mentality, this kind of silencing someone who doesn't agree with you, this kind of, people who don't agree with you are your enemy. And we're talking conservatives here, just regular conservatives like myself. We're not talking like serial killers and child rapists or anything like that. We're just talking conservatives who voted for Trump. That's all we're talking about. There's a lot of people who aren't that conservative who voted for Trump too. Trump's not even that conservative, but I mean, what this eventually leads to, this opens a very dangerous door. And it's a door that essentially it leads to fascism, and it leads to the complete suppression, the complete socialist, Marxist suppression of your enemies or any of your political opponents. It's like, it's very Stalin-esque. Just take all the political opponents, out back and shoot them. Essentially, put them in front of the firing squad. It's just crappy, right? And I'm not saying that AOC is saying that, but I just think she's too low IQ. She's too stupid to realize that this is dangerous stuff. It starts with censorship, and it starts with censorship of the right, and then it moves to censorship of the left, and then the government has complete control over who says what and who's allowed to speak and what's allowed to be out there on Twitter, Facebook, or wherever, right? What's about to be out in the social discourse, and then it moves. And once they've done censoring everyone's speech, then it gets worse. Where do you go from there? Well, from there, you go to locking up people you don't agree with. Maybe you lock up all your political opponents, right? And you're really starting to look like a Fidel Castro or like a Venezuelan or, then you're starting to look like an Iran or a Russian, a Stalinist Russian or a Putin. The left likes to complain about Putin, so we'll talk about Putin here. You start locking up your political opponents, and then what do you do? Once you've locked up all your political opponents, where does it go from there? Where's the next worst thing? Where's the next escalation, essentially? Well, then it goes, then you got to kill them. Then you got to kill anyone who doesn't say anything that you don't like. It's very like Orwellian. It's very, 1984 Big Brother-ish. It's gross. These people don't realize what they are pushing. And, this is the direction that we are seeing the Democratic Party go over the last couple years, actually, maybe even decades. We've been seeing them move towards this leftist, Marxist, socialist ideology for the longest time. And especially a few months, the last couple months with just the blatant, the absolute blatant censorship of voices on the right. It's not good, guys. It is not good at all. And if you want, if you want this conservative message to keep spreading on, you need to support people like me. You need to support people who are small time and outside of corporate media. So the best way you can do that is you can like my video, you can subscribe my video, and you can subscribe to my videos to my channel, and you can share it with people. Tell your friends about it. If you got a conservative person who you like to talk politics with, and they might be interested in my show, tell them about it. I'm on YouTube, and I'm on all the podcast subscribers, all providers. Excuse me, I'm on all the podcast providers. Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, anything you want, right? Anything you want to listen to. The podcast is nice because you can just, you can put it on when you're in the car. You can put it on when you're laying down to go to bed. You can put it on when you're, doing the dishes or, doing some laundry or anything, when you're just, maybe you're running and you like to work out or something like that. You can put on the podcast. You can put it in your headphones. You can put it on a speaker. You can just listen to it through your phone. You can get the news for the day, right? And it supports my channel too, and it helps me grow. So, yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Take it easy. Have a good weekend. I'll be posting some more content here, if not tomorrow, then the next couple days. But yeah, have a good one. Like and subscribe, and enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thanks.